So I'm going to talk about why we don't have Italian plumbers. Of course, Italian plumbers, that's a reference to Super Mario. He's an Italian plumber. And here's my nephew dressed up as a Mario character right there. So, start with the slides. So, what do we need to actually create a game? You need certain skills, of course. You need programming skills. You also need, well, wait, this is what I'm going to talk about today. Sorry. What I'm going to talk about is basically the skills that we need to develop games, the problems and challenges that we have right now in developing a game industry, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about solutions. And then I'm going to give a little bit of tips on how to start in making games. So you want to be a game developer. These are the skills that are required to make games. You need programming knowledge. You need to know how to draw, how to do animation, and of course, how to do storytelling. Because video games is a form of storytelling, regardless of how small the story is. But there's a really important skill that everybody kind of neglects, and that's the problem that we have. Does anybody kind of have an idea on what this skill is? Raise your hand if you know. None? Wow. Well, the skill that is missing from here, the one that we actually have a problem with, is game design. Most people don't know how to create games. What makes a game fun? What makes a game balanced, so it's fair for everybody and everybody can actually have fun. That's the skill, the most important skill that we actually don't have in the Arabic region here in general. So let's start to go back to the basics on when did the game industry start here in the Arabic world. There was a company called Sakhar, I don't know if you guys remember it, from the 70s and 80s. They made games for a system called the MSX, and the games were pretty fun. They were really fun. But the problem is that they were plagued by distribution problems. They couldn't distribute to different countries. They had to physically distribute, they had to physically distribute the actual cartridges. The cartridges were expensive, and later on, at the end of everything, the Gulf War happened, so it kind of ruined the company, and they kind of turned into translations and different things now. They still exist, but they just don't do game development at all. And of course, we have a problem with investors. After investors saw what happened to Sakhar, they are kind of scared to invest in the game industry. So for now, we have to go with little or no investment at all. So now, a void was created over 20 years now. We didn't develop games, we couldn't distribute games. We weren't even playing board games in the Middle East. We didn't have those as much. Does anybody play Dungeons and Dragons? See, nobody does. Nobody knows what those games are. Those games are bases. They're tabletop games. You play them on a table with what's it called? With dice and all of that, and then you actually get. It's a game of chance and all of that, and storytelling and different ways of balancing stories and balancing powers and whatnot. You played it in Arabic? Dungeons and Dragons. Oh no, that's something completely different. Dungeons & Dragons, each person kind of, it becomes a role-playing game. Each character chooses to be a character of some sort. I want to be an elf, I want it to be a dragon, I want it to be something else, and you create a story around it. And then you go fighting people, and there's one person in the, oops, I'm all over the place. One of the people who are, who are in the group chooses what story goes on, and what these people interact with, and the results depends on the dice being played. So yeah, so after all of that, we came to these challenges. We have no experience in game design. There is no magic bullet on how to be successful in the game industry. It's really hard, it's really different, and it's challenging. Everybody wants the quick cash out. Everybody just wants to make a game that will make a lot of money and get out. That's what they think is the way to do it, and that's frankly very terrible when it comes to games. people are also game developers who are trying to make games are overconfident and have a lot of pride. Every person wants to create the next Uncharted, wants to create the next Super Mario, wants to create the next this big thing. But sadly, that's not how you do it. That if you can't create a small game that is successful on the web, let's say a Flash game or something like that, you're never going to make a big success. And there are many people who are doing just random attempts. They're not studying the market. They don't know what people want from video games. They just make random things, and that's not the way to do it, really. And of course, there are not enough investment in video games because of everything above. All right, so this is the symptoms that we have right now. We have no industry. I don't think anybody here can basically, who's 80 years old, can tell his parents that I want to be a game developer, and their family would be like, yes, be a game developer. There are no companies that are actually that successful and that big that actually hire game developers. We don't have the manpower or the woman power to do this. Sadly, there's not enough people who are interested in game development, and if there are, they're lazy, they don't want to make games. So we need more of those people. There's no academic interest, too, in universities. Most universities teach programming, teach the basic skills, art, graphics, and everything. But then how do you bring all of those together and how to actually create game design? That's lacking from almost all universities around the world, not just in Arabia. There are only a handful of game schools around the world that actually teach game design. And then there's a heavy reliance nowadays on translating games. Yeah, translating games is kind of a way to be in the game industry, but at the same time, it's not really going to solve any of the problems that we had before. So it's not a real solution. It's a step, but it's not a real solution. And of course, the problem with game developers too is that they have a quick drop in motivation whenever they start developing. They realize how hard it is to make a game, and then they decide that I don't want to make it anymore. So that's a problem. So here are the solutions that I proposed. First of all, with anybody who ever done software, they know that quick prototyping is the way to go. Prototype really first, really quickly, find the problems with the issues, and then optimize later. Don't focus on cool graphics or games that have intensive need for horsepower. I'm talking about computer horsepower, and artistic inspirations. Don't try to tell a story at the beginning. Just try to make something fun. Don't develop for too long. If you can't release a game in 2 weeks, keep trying until you can actually start developing a game every 2 weeks or something, short like that. Publish your game, modify it if it needs modification, and then republish it again until you can actually get to something solid at the end. Yeah, and at the end, that's what you need to actually prove your game design skills and build a portfolio after that. If you want to start pursuing this seriously, you have to build a portfolio of at least 20 games that you actually have developed for fun on your free time, and you're not pursuing any business from it. And the most important thing is surround yourself with a community. Because if you don't surround yourself with a community of game developers, you will feel bored and you will stop and you will get demotivated. You have to really surround yourself with people that care about you, but first, at the same time, share your passions. I should find a better way to do this next time. So find that support group. And that takes me to what I have created, which is Game Taco. Taco means octopus in Japanese, so that's why I call it Game Taco. It's a community of game developers and a way to publish your games really easily and learn how to develop games. The octopus, because we got many, we're a community, we got many arms. So it's a development community, as I said. We focus on quick prototyping. It's a website, like all the Flash game websites. But we focus on the Arabic game developer. You can have a developer account with us, you can publish your game, and you can get peer review, which is really important. Your friends, your other developers on the community can tell you that your game is not as good, and you need to change specific things with it. you can focus on game design. You don't have to worry about graphics or pretty things. It's a good way to build your portfolio because you'll have your own profile, your own developer profile that you can show people. These are my games. These are the ratings of my games. This is how many people played my games. We also organized something called Game Zenga, which is a game jam. Does anybody know what a game jam is? Show of hands. Nobody again? Game jam. Game jams are game development competitions where you have 2 days to develop a game from scratch. We organize those, Pan-Arabia, and so far we've done a decent job, I think. So this is where Game Taco stands right now. We have over 200 Arab registered developers on our website, from Morocco to China. We got Arabs who live in all of those places and in between, and they registered with us. We got over 150 unique games there. Some of them are not that great, but some of them are really amazing and really inspirational. The last Game Zenga, over 300 developers signed up for it, and 43 games came out in 3 days. We had a vote on our forum. We asked people, what theme do you want the contest to be about? They chose freedom at the end. And on the first day, we distributed the theme to them. It was a secret. And they had 3 days to develop a game. 43 games came out, and they were amazing. And they're all available on Game Taco. Right, so let's go to the good part. You want to start making games, right? Right, so how do you start making games? Most people go to, since you guys are IT students or computer science students, I suggest going for a game engine that is programming based, not a drag and drop kind of engine. Does anybody know what a game engine is? Basically, it's a framework, if you ever worked with frameworks like .NET or anything like that, that helps you create games. So it helps you create games. And these are game engines. It has most of the libraries that you need to create games. For example, if you want to pause the screen, you don't have to write everything to pause the screen. There are people already wrote that for you, so you don't need to rewrite that again. Don't go for story, don't go for graphics. Just try to make something that is fun with squares, just a bunch of squares. If you can make something fun with that, you will find an artist that will fill it up for you later. Just make something fun, make that interaction fun and as cool as it can be, really. Something that you like to play with. Play test it and modify. Of course, give it to a lot of people, let them test it. I can't iterate how important play testing is. A game is not fun until you play test it, until you're sick of it. If you're not sick of your game, you didn't play test it enough. Publish quickly. Publish your game as quick as possible. That's why Game Taco is there, so we can publish your game really quickly. You don't need an Apple account. You don't need a Google account or anything like that to create it. You don't need to pay $99 or anything like that to have an account. Just publish it. Build your portfolio as soon as you can. Just keep making games for fun. Don't think that you're going to make your biggest success the first time. Just keep building it. Keep showing that you're capable of different skills, different ideas, different approaches to making something fun. Next slide. All right, my recommendations on technology. Since you guys are programmers, I guess you guys are going to like this. Actionscript 3. Does anybody know Actionscript 3? Hands? Nobody again. Actionscript 3 is the script that you use to develop Flash videos or Flash objects. You don't have to use Flash. There are open source IDEs that you can write ActionScript programs in from scratch. Anything that you write in ActionScript can work in a browser as Flash, or it can work as an app on desktops as well as mobile phones, from iOS to Android to BlackBerries, and that's through Adobe Air for devices. My favorite place to find resources is flashgamedojo.com. Flashgamedojo is basically takes you through the first steps on how to create your first ActionScript 3 game using two of the most popular open source game engines on Actionscript. What's really fun too is Dames Making Games. It's a website dedicated for women who want to develop video games. And it has a lot of information in Flash Game Dojo, but it's targeted toward women. It's very interesting, and the girl who developed it is awesome and very active on Twitter, so go follow her. Another engine that I really like, Unity 3D, and this is what I developed my this presentation on. It's an actual game engine that makes 3D games. I'm using it to make 2D games because I think they're cool. At the end, just choose a mature technology. And that's why I don't really like to recommend HTML5 games. First of all, because most of the game engines are really new on HTML5. And there's a lot of issues with cross-platform, cross-browser compatibility. So I recommend not to use HTML5 now, but it's kind of a trend. And we are developing an app for Windows 8 pretty soon to be released in the next couple of weeks. And you can publish your game on Windows 8 that way. But there is a game engine that I like that does HTML5 games, and it's called Impact.js. It's not bad. Use it, and just use a technology that you can find support with. That's why I like ActionScript. There's so many people doing ActionScript around the world. You will find somebody that has the same problem that you have, and somebody who actually solved it for them. So that's why I recommend ActionScript 3. Starling Framework is pretty much what Angry Birds was developed for on Facebook. Angry Birds on Facebook was developed using Starling Framework. It's basically Actionscript 3, but it runs on the GPU. So it's much quicker on mobile phones and on browsers, on any device that has a GPU. But if you're doing smaller games, you don't need that much GPU power, so you can just go with the basic ActionScript. This is how I started. My first game was called Untitled. If you write Untitled on Google, you will see it's the first result. It's on Game Taco. It's not that interesting of a game, but it was my first step. And this actually, what you're seeing right now, it's actually a prototype of Untitled 2. It's going to have a lot of 3D elements in it. And while I was developing Untitled 2, that's when I got the call to be here. So I decided to just work my presentation into my game that I'm working on. I made a game using the Flexible game engine, which is available on both of those websites that I mentioned earlier. And I used Adobe Air to port it to Android. It works really well. It doesn't work that well now because screen sizes changed, and I wasn't scaling the images. So now if you run it on a new Android device, you'll see the quarter of the screen, the game running on the quarter of the screen. I went to Flash Game Dojo. That's where I learned, step by step from there. And now I'm using Unity 3D, and I also want to use Impact.js, but I still haven't gone into those. But there's always a lot of people in our community that have worked with stuff like that. So join us. Here's our website, gametalking.com. You'll see a lot of games, and you can look at how to be a developer on our website. We have links there. And then we got forum.gametalker.com. That's where we have our developer forum. You have to get approved before you go in to make sure that you're an actual developer, not somebody who's just trolling everybody. And then there's our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/GameTalkWithDevs. We are very active there. We write a lot of things and just post funny stuff. And everybody just basically updates everybody on the status of their games and what they're doing, and get feedback from there. So yeah, so join us there. And I really would like to get you guys with us in Game Taco. I had a bet once with somebody that actual game development and the game development industry won't come from men in Saudi Arabia. I had a bet that actually women would excel in game development much more than men. So I really would like you guys to prove me right and prove them wrong, and actually start developing games. Here's a game called Tis'a Qafazat by Jihad al-Ahmar, the founder of Qayyim.com. I taught him how to make a game using Actionscript in 2 hours, and he made Tizakafazat in 3 days. And it's an amazing game. In design, it's only 6 stages, but as soon as you play the game, you'll see the charm and how charming that game is. And it's only squares. The whole game was done in squares. Different colored, that's it. There's Anqidhum, then there's Amar Sharif who did Banut al-Banon, amazing game. So join us all, and we're from all over Arabia. I'm based in Riyadh, there's people based in Jeddah, there are people based in Amman, Masr, there are people from Ubisoft, Morocco, who joined our community. So we're really learning from each other and trying to hopefully get the game industry up and running. So thank you very much for your time, I really appreciate it. And this is where you can find me on the interwebs. Twitter, email, Facebook, AskFM, say at me, Phone Spring, whatever. Just write Hamid AF, and you'll find me anywhere. So I would like to see if you guys have any questions, because I think that's the most interesting part.